Bears for Toomey here. Today we're going to be addressing the intercooler issues we were seeing at COTA. We had some really high charge temps, seeing over 200 degrees, like 215 degrees in intake air temps. So what we're going to do is bring this old intercooler back. I ran this in 2021. It's a 4-inch Garrett core. It's 2 of them welded together. And we're going to eliminate these intercoolers that I have on the side. These are from eBay. They've done their purpose. They've made up to 1,300 horsepower, but it seems like anything over 1,100-ish, they don't like. So this is the first time I've ever seen really high intake air temps. I normally never turn it up past 1,000. And I was at 1,100 at one point, trying to overcome the head issue that I was dealing with. I was like, let's turn up the power, try to just get more out of the car, and that resulted in higher charge temps. So we can't be running the car around 200 degrees plus in intake air temps. So I thought about running meth. I have meth, I have everything ready to go to do that, but I figured if I could just keep it simple, that would be the best way to keep the charge temps under control. So let's get to it, start changing this over. I'm gonna try to mount this the way I mounted it before and take all this off. So let's get at it. What I ended up doing was got this mounted. I added some extra threaded bolt holes to tie this in a little bit better, and then I used the inner ones to mount the intercooler. And then what I ended up doing was I stole the reducer at a 45 that was from here going down, and it actually clears perfectly. So I'm gonna go 45 out and then probably like a 30-degree bend to take it the rest of the way. And call it a day. This actually brought it up just enough to make it flat again, and I'll probably end up throwing just a straight piece of flat bar right there to hold that in a little bit more. But I think that's pretty much it. The intercooler will live where it's at. I gotta build that cone out like that right there the rest of the way, and then what I'm gonna do here, so we don't block the intercooler too much because the opening is only up to here, is I'm gonna lay this down at like a 45 and then make a bracket off the splitter itself that picks up these provisions, and then the same thing in the front. And then I'll do the same thing for the intercooler itself. I'll make a bracket that welds to the intercooler and then goes to the splitter. That way we have enough strength holding it all together. And that'll pretty much tie it up. So that's the plan. I got to order some parts and get everything in. Another issue that we have been dealing with is the brakes. Switching to this Tilton pedal box, for some reason, I'm not able to get all the braking Gs that I was getting before. I used to see upwards of 3 Gs under braking, and this entire time since I've rebuilt the car, I've only seen 1.5 Gs. So it's been kind of scary trying to get the car to slow down. Looking at different data on Motec and Bosch, it's showing me that there's been a lot of bias migration. So as I give it a lot of pressure on the initial hit of the brake pedal, it doesn't really seem to give me what I want. And then as I'm trail braking off, pressures go up, and then also it flips where that the bias is now rear happy versus front. So it's very scary and very hard to control a car like that. And I just been driving through it, just trying to make it work, because obviously I didn't have time to switch back to my other setup, the OEM setup, or really mess around with this brake setup. So I'm under the gun now and looking at all different data that I've seen on other Corvettes with the Tilton pedal box. It doesn't really seem like any of those are anywhere close to what I'm able to brake at with the factory setup. So unfortunately, I feel like because of such little time I have, it's probably best just to go back to the factory setup. Talking to a lot of different people, it takes a very long time to get a pedal box very happy, and I don't really have the time to do that. The brakes were perfectly fine before. I never had a problem with braking, and the only reason why I decided to do that was to throw forward tubes to the front frame rails. So since I obviously didn't have time to even do that, and it seems like the fix that I made is holding the frame together for now, I'm just gonna put the factory setup back in and get my confidence back in the car. A lot of time is made up under braking, and if you can't push the brakes and you're not confident, you really aren't pushing as hard as you can. And I feel like as a driver, I always have that in the back of my head of like, I can brake at the absolute last second and it's not gonna matter. And that wasn't the case at Circuit of the Americas. I couldn't even make turn 1. So it was very, very different than what I'm used to. So I'm just gonna put it back to the way it was, and hopefully we get our brakes back. So as you can see, we have the factory pedal assembly back, brake pedal, and I chopped this back a little bit to save just a pound or two, but also make it easier to get in and out and not be, you know, all the way out here for no reason. This also held up, this bracket also held up the factory steering column, and obviously we don't need to do that anymore. So it's very difficult to film inside of here, so I don't know. Maybe I'll film it, maybe I won't, but I'm going to now attach the factory clutch back. And it's very, very tight, and it's very tough to get in there. So I'll try to do my best to film it, but most likely probably won't. But pretty much we're just putting these pedals back in. Once we get these pedals back in the car, we will move to the booster. The booster will go back in here, and then the clutch master as well will go back in, and then we'll attach the lines back here. So it'll be pretty simple. I do have some pretty trick stuff that I want to show you once it's all in. So let me get this all together, and then I'll get back to you. So something that's super cool that we're adding to the car are the Stably dry brake fittings. They are sold by Holley, and they make removing your brakes super simple. You can disconnect your brake lines and not let any air in them. So this will come in handy when we are thrashing on the car or just working on the car in general, where we have to pull the engine or we need to pull the brakes. You know, let me show you right now. In the car, if I wanted to drop this front cradle, all my hard lines are keeping it from the cradle dropping and being able to remove it. So now what I'll do is I'll install them right there where the hard line meets the soft line on the body, right here as well. And that'll be a dry brake fitting right there. And that will be able to just come apart, and then this whole setup can either come off or that whole setup can drop down. I just did these lines in -3, and I'm just gonna swap those over to -3 as well, add these in the mix. The other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add it to the clutch hydraulic line as well, so that way that whole setup can come out of the car and be quickly disconnected and not spill any fluid, not introduce any air into the system. And when you're working by yourself and you can't really just bleed the brakes and bleed clutches all the time, it comes in handy. Hopefully I can put it on in the next episode and we can show you guys how they work. Factory booster, the factory master cylinders for clutch and brake, and back to the factory pedals. Really sucks. I really wish that we could have made the pedal box work, but unfortunately, you know, 1.5 Gs of braking just isn't going to cut it for us. You know, I'm used to braking so late and having all the braking Gs, and it's a really kind of scary feeling to not only brake way earlier than you're used to, but then also still not be able to slow and stop the car. So because of that, we went back to the factory setup, and now we get amazing brakes back. So that's gonna do it for this episode. On the next episode, we are going to finish welding and fabricating up the new / old intercooler, and then hopefully we have the engine back. So until next time, see you guys later.